interactive in the world, and their job is to harness that and bring it forth for their brands. It's in his DNA. He was in the 6th grade. He was programming video games. He started creating his own blog in 1997, which in internet years is like prehistoric.
Like doggy.
Yeah. And then we have, to his left, David Cohen, who is the Chief Media Officer of which is the pure play media agency within Interpublix, the sister agency of McCann World Group, and part of the Media Brands network within Interpublic. And David, when did you get the Chief Media Officer stripes? Just like
last year.
Last year.
Whoa, that's loud, sorry.
So before that, he was Director of Digital Communications and, is a dyed-in-the-wool, digerati kind of guy. He's also an OMA All-Star. Congratulations. And, probably knows this space as well as anybody in a media agency. His clients include Sony, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, Kohl's, L'Oreal, Army, the U.S. Army, that is, and Chrysler. So there's a lot of big bucks behind his portfolio as well. Then we have Richard Mooney, who is a partner and managing director for North America of Essence Digital, which is probably the least familiar brand in this room, but you'll be seeing more of them. So he emigrated over from the UK, set up the branch in New York, and you've been acquiring agencies in San Francisco, Seattle, and I would think some more pretty soon. His passion is finding new ways to leverage data and technology to give Essence Digital's, an advantage on what their strategies and their goals are. Some of his clients include Google, YouTube, and eBay. And then we have Paul Rostkowski, who is the president of Varick Media Management, which is the pure play agency trading desk that's part of the MDC Partners family. It's a sister agency to Kirschbaum Bond, Senecal Partners, and Media Kitchen, and all those fine agencies. So we have 2 agency holding companies represented here and 2 independents. So we have a pretty good mix. Before Varick, which he joined in September of 2011, Paul was the Chief Revenue Officer of Lucid Media, and he has advertising sales chops too, had worked at HealthLink Network and D&B Hoovers. And, I've been spending some time in the last month or so trailing his team, in particular one of his chief traders, and I'm hoping to have a nice profile in that organization in about a week. So I hope you all read that, because one of the things I'm trying to do, and I'll make the transition now, one of the things that I'm really trying to do is understand what's going on, because this business changes so fast. I've been covering it for 30 years, and I feel like every day, I'm just behind the curve again, because something new. I mean, today I think like 3 acronyms were created, and I'm still trying to figure out what they are. And I felt the only way to really learn about it is to begin embedding myself in the organizations of the people who do this. And so a few of them have opened up their doors, and Varick is one of them. And what I'm learning is, like, as much as we talk about technology and machines and algorithms, it's really more about the people and the processes. But I'm going to venture to say that those technologies are impacting the people and the processes too. And what I really would like to get out of this is how it's impacting the culture of how we plan, buy, strategize media, and create advertising and get it to consumers. So I'd just like to open up with just kind of a general sense on what you think the biggest impact is going on from this particular part of the business, this programmatic trading, this real-time bidding, which I hope we get into it in a little bit, but I think is moving faster than people could possibly think. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's ironic, as digital marketers, everyone in this room is a digital marketer, I assume, and we tend to look at traditional brands and the traditional space and say, we were the pioneers doing things differently, and now we're kind of faced, even within this industry, with the way that we buy media is shifting, right? And the title of this panel is about culture, and is it time for a real-time marketing culture, and what are the impacts of that? When you've got people and processes that are set up, and suddenly there's a shift. There's a great, and not just a shift, but automation is replacing some of the work that we do, right? Like, I've been at a conference in a room full of media buyers, and somebody said, "How much time do you guys spend in Excel, manhandling spreadsheets?" And like 85% of the room, hands went up, like saying that they spent more than half their day doing that. And all of a sudden, there's going to be a big shift. So, I think that's creating a lot of uncertainty, but there's a real need for people to embrace it. And that's why this conference is happening and why it's full.
So David, I know you grew up in the digital side, but you're responsible for the entire media organization at UM. A lot of old guys, I would think, from the TV side and print and stuff like that. How are these shifts taking place now, impacting your organization, the culture of the people who work for you?
Yeah, so I think that the simple fact that we took at UM a guy that was in digital for 16 years and now has responsibility for the planning and buying across channels is a testament to the fact that we believe that technology is becoming increasingly important in what we do for a living. I can answer this question in like an hour, but I'll try to shorten it. I mean, our whole structure has changed in earnest over the past year. We've been on a fairly aggressive transformation journey. Things that include our planning team is now rebranded as portfolio management. So we believe that much like the financial consultant looks at kind of the daily performance of stocks and bonds and treasury bills, et cetera, and optimizes your mix in near real time, the media business will continue to move in that direction. So we have portfolio management as a discipline, which is our formerly known as planners. We also took a look at our investment team, and our investment team, as we know, the world is changing in two ways. Number one, we have human-to-human relationships, high touches with sales organizations. We do strategic programs, integrations, things that require a lot of TLC. So we've doubled down in that area. We have a group called Experience Architects who do content and experiences, which are the things that we know and love, high-touch integrations. We're also doubling down on the efficient, data-driven side of the business. We have a agency trading desk called Cadreon, which many of you probably are familiar with, and we have embedded Cadreon folks in our offices closer to the client teams so that they are part of our kind of go-to-market effort. So on the investment side, doubling down on our relationship-driven business and on our technology and data-driven business. And people tend to lean one way or the other. So if you were a buyer in television or if you were a buyer in digital or in print, you have a kind of inclination to go either to the human side of the business, high touch, or to the data-driven technology side of the business. And we're seeing that play out.
I want to come back to that concept of portfolio management because I do think it's apropos for everybody here. But Richard, just to follow up on the opening question there, I mean, one of your points of passion personally and what differentiates Essence is that you're about harnessing that data flow. But the data flow is like insurmountable now. It's coming at us. We had a conference here in this room yesterday about data-driven marketing and big data, and it's now coming at us faster than any human beings could possibly think about it. So what would you say, I mean, you're building an organization, so it's a little different in terms of retrofitting a culture, but what would you say is the biggest change on the people that you employ and work with?
Well, I think given what's happening in the digital marketing realm, and I don't think this is purely just down to RTB, it is big data. You do need those data scientists, magicians, whatever you call it. There's people that can effectively mine through terabytes and terabytes of data that's processed on a daily basis and actually find the rich seam of information or trends that's going to actually change or impact your clients' goals. But at the same time, I also think that, regardless of what we do or where this industry goes, we're still going to need the people that can help interpret a client's needs, be able to really get under the skin of their and understand that client, and then develop a digital strategy off the back of it. So we've got a world where we have these two types of people, and I think we're in danger of actually creating two completely isolated teams. What's important is that we're building an organization that does have a crossover. So they still have that common thread and ability to talk and converse with one another. So what it means is we're just looking for smarter and smarter people, and the pool of those people is smaller, and is relatively small. So I think that's the biggest impact it's having on our agency, is that we're having to work even harder to make sure we can find the right people to see us through to tomorrow and onwards, I guess.
Well, Paul, David used the concept of portfolio management, a very classic Wall Street concept, and I think Varick is probably the best representative of a trading infrastructure on this panel here. And personally, I think, it's kind of brilliant what the agency industry in general has done in terms of creating trading desks. It was a great response to all this ad tech that was spawning and creating all these different markets out there, and it gave you centralized control. But why don't you talk a little bit more about, I know you're still new to Varick, but it seems like you've put your fingerprint on it pretty good in the past year. What is the culture that you've created, and why, what is a trading desk, I guess?
Sure, Joe. The environment we have is a very fast-paced environment, okay? So, the analogy of the world we work in terms of accessing and acquiring real-time media, the workflow and the tempo within the organization is a very fast-paced, real-time type of execution. So, we've all, as we've grown up in this business, we've gotten used to responding very quick to clients' needs. We can launch a campaign within minutes, and we can pull it down within minutes. In the real-time world, that obviously applies, and we're expected to be able to operate in that. But where this starts to impact is the culture is you need to find people that operate with that sense of urgency. We talk about how the programmatic world is going to lessen the need for people. My view is opposite of that. It's not less people, just very different people. The people we're hiring are people with engineering backgrounds, people with economics backgrounds, analysts. We don't hire people much on the media per se background. We have account services people that support that role. But even on my sales side of my division, we're hiring more close to now sales engineer types, because we're finding as we go out into the market, we're becoming much more of an educator and helping people understand this new world that we're in. And that includes clients directly as well as agencies. So it's a whole different type of person, not any less number of people. Just that person is also more expensive to hire, which we have to accommodate. But the net effect on the culture is that we're hiring what I think to be is smarter in a different way type of people, okay, and people that operate pretty quickly. They have a sense of urgency to move pretty quickly to respond to needs, particularly when we're driving campaigns. A campaign goes up, clients want results like within an hour or when campaigns launch, and normally we need to go through a longer period of that, so we have to manage that expectation as well.
So let me just flip that same question around a little bit, which is you all represent your own organizations, but you interrelate with other stakeholders, clients, other agency groups. And what I want to get a sense on is how this manifestation here, this movement to a real-time biddable market structure is changing the whole industry in a way. And in your company, you've championed this concept of the biddable media technologist, as this new function to integrate, search, display, all these things that are going on, and to be this key expert that works with the brand people, the strategy people, the ad creation people. Can you all talk a little bit about how this is changing the way people operate in all those cultures that you have to work with clients? Agency of record, agency relationships. And you are basically a client when you come right down to it, working with media agencies.
Yeah, in the last 10 years, there have been two things that have happened that have been pretty massive. One is digital technology has allowed us to start to measure the performance of what we do. So, we've gone from this world where, half my ad budget is a waste of money to I know exactly where every single dollar is performing, but I'm not doing half the things I should be doing, And that's been coupled with this massive financial super pressure that we've all experienced, since 2008 and the economy tumbling and all this great uncertainty we're living with. And the result has been this kind of focus on business intelligence, but it's completely left-brained business intelligence. We're not looking holistically at problems. We're just using the left side of our business brain, right? We're looking at parts instead of wholes. We're looking analytically instead of subjectively. And it's important for us to do both. I had breakfast about 1.5 years ago with the CMO of Del Monte. And I remember him saying to me, we were talking about this notion of selling innovation, which, as a digital agency, I'm often doing. And he's saying, you know, within a marketing organization, anyone whose job title is not CMO or VP of marketing is tasked with optimizing downward, right? So, you know, but organizations don't grow from optimizing downward. And I think that is where the entire focus of the industry is. And all of these new technologies, they're squeezing every bit of efficiency out of the important performance-based part of the equation. But, you know, my take on it is from a client perspective, you know, when they're looking, you know, and I'm sitting there with my media partners presenting, you know, and at the end of the day, they're looking at these results and they're saying, great, we got our click-through rate from 0.06 to 0.07. Good job, team. How are we going to get it to 0.08? You know, and that's, so we introduce a new technology, we get it to 0.09, and now we're looking for 0.11, you know, versus really transforming our businesses and really doing what we need to do to build our clients' brands. And I think that's having an impact on creative. You know, this is certainly not driving creativity. You know, the nexus point between big data and big experience is like these little banner ads, right? Like, you may be able to get them to perform, but, you know, are they truly vehicles for advertising, or are they just kind of revenue generating tools, or you know, whatever your KPI happens to be? And I think creative is going to continue to follow that. Parts of creative are now becoming commoditized.
I think the answer, Joe, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. I think the answer to Joe's question is probably twofold. I think that, you know, as it relates to clients and other kind of parts of our, I'm not going to use the word with an E because everyone always talks about ecosystems and it drives me absolutely mental. But the other parts of our equation, other pieces of the agency structure, there's been a large degree of education. I think that, you know, we tend to get an inch wide and a mile deep really, really quickly, and we get caught up in all the sausage making that, by and large, clients are not interested in. Clients are interested in a number of KPIs that they are measured against, and those can include sales or brand health or leads or whatever it is. And any lever that we can use as an agency or as their partner to get to that end result, we will do. And we are finding good success in many cases in the RTB space with our trading desk. Either drawing insights from activities that we're putting out in the market that informs other pieces of the media plan. So insights that can inform creative that goes into television, insights that inform other media choices, and net just performance based on moving sales, moving cars, getting leads, et cetera. So I think it's education and just simply results.
So just adding to some of the comments that have been said, one thing I point out, that optimization is in no way a bad thing. It's a really good thing about making your lower funnel work harder for you. But I think the problem is that we need to be careful that we don't think it's the be-all and end-all. You know, it's an element of a wider strategy. You still need to create that awareness that then your data-driven marketing can then really optimize on top of.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that, you know, it is critically important and to optimize and be efficient and to drive that direct, you know. But like you said, I think we measure, because it's so easy to put a tracking tag on something, right, and feed it into this software where, you know, the other kind of brand metrics maybe that are equally important or more difficult to measure or correlate, they often just don't get the focus, you know. And when the question was, how is it impacting the industry? And I think that's the point.
I agree a lot with what you're saying, Adam, because this is one of my concerns. And you invoked the old John Wanamaker quote about that we didn't know that 50% of our advertising worked or not, and now we know 100%. But you only know 100% of the part that's performance-driven that you have the back-end metrics for. And the problem is, my concern, and this is what I'd really like you all to talk about, and especially you, Paul, because it's what you're trading in, day out. Is that where the industry's moving? Because that's where it's accountable and that's where the data is measurable. And I really see this in social now because of all those petabytes of new data that are coming. A lot of them are just being thrown off because people's data is now available. But are those the right things? And, you're data guys too. And I guess what I'm saying is what made advertising and media great was serendipity, human nature, things that you couldn't really put into an algorithm, right?
Well, yeah, well, there's still obviously a place for that serendipity and for that to continue in advertising. I mean, from my point of view, where we run into issues or problems is where there's a lack of clarity of what needs to get done for a specific client and what their objective is. Because we can be very good in the space about getting to where you want to go, okay? And it's sausage making often getting to that point, okay? And how much do you really want to know about that? And the more we get drawn into that, the more confusing of where we really need to go to becomes part of the dialogue. When we work with clients, what we prefer to do is be focusing on driving outcomes, okay? And a conversation on that. And what is it you need to happen? What do you need to be successful? Let's focus on how we get there. What are the right strategies to apply to that? Often what we're finding is there's a lack of understanding where they want to go or where they want to get to, okay? And then for some what seems to be arbitrary reasons, they have issues with the strategies being applied or how you're going to go about it. Is RTB right? I don't want you on this exchange, but I want you on this exchange. I don't want you to use that DSP. I want you to use this one. Can you use my DMP or the other DMP I have? And that often starts to interfere with our ability to actually drive the outcomes you want to get to. So, I get challenged with, and I understand they've got the money and they're paying to have something happen, and they're paying me, but we're specialists at doing this, okay? And allow us to help you get to where you need to be. And I think it often falls down in that. When that conversation, when you start to go 1 inch wide and a mile deep, that's your point, okay, where we start to break down in the business and the conversation.
Yeah, and the challenge is like marketers are beholden to the CFO now, right? Like they have to justify everything they spend on an ROI model, right? They have to, literally, I've looked in clients' eyes and they've been like, either I'm so frustrated I can't get this approved, or give me a projection, and I say, well, this is something that's never been done before. I'd be making up numbers, and they say, okay, just do that, and okay, we'll make assumptions to make a predictive model, but not everything is going to have a predictable ROI, and like when your focus is efficiency, if everything's is focused on efficiency and how you do media and squeeze everything out of it, you're going to want to be efficient about how creative is created as well. So, but creative has exponential returns when it's great, and that's being squeezed out. So I think you're going to see more and more of the dynamic creative being kind of driving the response-oriented piece, and you're only going to see creative more on the brand side that clients are willing to make investments in.
Yeah, well, I think also on the creative aspect, I mean, we've spent a long time building up the value of a view-through metric for an ad that was never seen or never engaged upon. So part of the attribution of this needs to be in discussion as well in terms of what's the appropriate attribution for a given outcome. And of course, as obviously technology is being invented, we've got viewable impression information coming now, so hopefully that helps in this part of the space.
Yeah.
We had a... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this question of accountability, I think is completely right. Digital marketing is really accountable, but I actually really thrive on that challenge and really like it. I think what's important is that you get the client to understand what the correct metric is. And it's not always, click-through CPA. Like you say, it's an element of incremental view-through. It's talking about, an attitudinal study, with layered on top of creative sequencing to see how the different audience, and that's when it gets interesting. We've got so many tools at our fingertips. It's just about making sure that we're actually measuring the correct metric that's most important.
We've been very, very outspoken advocates of this idea of performance-based compensation. I'm not sure if you guys have seen any of our stuff on that subject, but that's a related topic. So it goes something like, Mr. or Mrs. Client, we will get no margin or profit on your business until we achieve the metrics that we agree to up front. If we overachieve those metrics, there's a significant upside for us at the agency. If we don't achieve those metrics, we're going to write you a check back that we didn't meet those objectives. The only reason that we're able to do that is because we have a good sense of what is moving the needle and what isn't. So we've invested a lot of money, time, and effort over the past several years in people, technology, and data. We have a partnership with Nielsen that allows us to see things that are going on in the big bad world of television and correlate that to things that we see in the digital world, today display and video, soon to be in mobile, that allows us to be able to turn the dial to affect that performance so that we're not having to write checks back to clients. But we have done that in the past.
Okay, so just to step up to a slightly higher level, I think I heard from all of you similar things, that it's still humans doing very human things, whether it's client service or data insights or taking risk management in a trading environment. But the technology keeps accelerating, keep moving faster and faster and faster. And I wonder if, in the end, you know, I was keeping track of the jokes today because Joanna O'Connell started off saying we weren't laughing in this room enough. And there was some good ones. I liked Chris Eberle's Google Plus exchange. There was Paul Dolan, who took a knock on our the millions of people watching this video streaming here from this conference today. It's actually 999,000. Steve's joke about the real-time bidding. But I was also looking at some of the wonkier things that took place, and this discussion in the private exchanges about singularity kind of threw me because I'd never heard that concept before, except from Ray Kurzweil's idea that we're reaching the point where man and machine are going to fuse pretty soon. So we had a conference yesterday on big data, data-driven marketing, and the most amazing insight I heard was this woman from Macy's who said the problem that they've come across now is that they've gotten so good with the data of targeting the consumer so well and serving the information to them so well that they're actually getting bored because they're seeing exactly what they look like. And that Macy's now has to create content that surprises them. And I mean, aren't we going to get back to that old world of the big idea and serendipity and, you know, surprising people, something that the machines cannot possibly do?
Absolutely. So consumers see 1,200 ads on average a day. And we know what happens to that, right? We tune it out, we actively avoid it, we try to run away from it. So yes, it's not an either or, it's not an all or nothing. So, which is why integrations, custom content, that whole business is thriving for that serendipity, for that surprise and delight, for that ability to break through those 1,200 ads a day. But by the same token, we need to get smarter and more efficient at using data to target the right audiences as best as we can. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's definitely both.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you know, it goes beyond just exchanges and real-time bidding when you think about like how the culture of marketing is shifting toward real time, right? Like, you know, Beyonce was, you know, sang it at the inauguration this week, and everyone was talking about it, right? Like, that's a current event. That's something that's happening right now. And it's, you know, yesterday was the coldest day of the year in New York, right? That's like a thing, and these are all opportunities for content creation. You know, what's trending on Google right now? What's trending on in social? You know, I had an experience. I don't know if anyone's seen Coca-Cola Company just redid their website and made it like a content portal. And the head of, I wrote a thing on my blog kind of criticizing it a little bit, saying, you know, kudos for them, but I would do this differently. And the head of digital from Coke reaches out to me and invites me, because he saw that on Radiant 6, and invites me to write a blog post that week on their own site, about their site, criticizing their site on Coke.com, you know. And I'm talking to him, and he's telling me how, this was right around Thanksgiving, he's like, yeah, that week, they saw that Coca-Cola cake was trending on Google. So they reached into the archives, they found a recipe for Coca-Cola cake, and within 6 hours, they had a piece of content up, you know? And, you know, we need to be able to think about how are we going to be opportunistic in our marketing, create snackable content that people can, that's relevant to people, that does have a surprise and a smile, right? You know, rather than just kind of optimizing offers and, you know, oh, your skin is this color, you're this age bracket, you're male or female, here's a photo we're going to show you.
It's a different emphasis. I think that the way that we talk about it is historically we've spent, if you take 100% of time, it's been 20% in planning, 60% in planning, 20% in buying, and 20% in tracking once it's in market. Most of the activity has been in pre-market activity. That is turning itself on its head. Most of the time now is going to be spent once something is in market. So it's 20% on planning, 20% on execution, and 60% on that kind of optimization, hearing what's happening in the market and changing and adjusting accordingly, or doing a blog post to Coke, as it may be.
It's interesting you say that, Adam, relative to some of these events, such as the inauguration or the temperature in New York. Even from a data trading and optimization side, and this is the question of how it's impacting humans versus machines, is we find that a lot of these algorithms that have been built are not very good at dealing with what's called the noise out in the marketplace. So when the weather drops to zero, or there's an inauguration, or there's a major sporting event or happening, often the technology can't accommodate that, and that's where the human element comes in. So it could be effective on the creative side, social side, but also on the sort of data-driven algorithmic side. The human piece is going to be a big part of that, as we're seeing now as well. So we try to add that in to accommodate accordingly.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example, and I think the best example of where the industry's doing it well is in content marketing. And it's the reason we picked Digitas as OMA's Agency of the Year this year, because of a lot of things that we're doing, but particularly the Brand Live lab that they created. Because what they're doing is they're tracking real-time data, story, trending, whatever, and they're reacting like we do in the press, as a news organization, to say, what kind of story can we turn around in real time on this? But that's where it kicks over to the humans, so it's a good example. One of my concerns is with the advertising portion, especially media impressions, that it's happening so fast and the machines are making so much of the decision, albeit programmed by your gurus, that we're losing that human element.
I think that's probably, when we talk about planning, tracking, and execution, that's why I'd probably expand that execution bit, because the machines are only as smart as the humans that are using them, right? And it's all about the constraints and the inputs that we give them, and then we allow it to optimize in between those constraints. And there needs to be a significant amount of time placed on actually checking that the machines are making the right decision, understanding what's underperforming, rip that out, add in something else to test, making sure that you're continually testing across the segments, always looking for something new, and that's.
So let me give you a response to that. We did a story earlier this week about Rocket Fuel's great year that they had, and like doubled their earnings, et cetera. And I asked them what was the big innovation that they had, and I apologize because I'm repeating this today, but it's relevant to what you're saying, which is they said the big thing they did was they got rid of all the need for human intervention. That up until this last year, they had the machines run, and then they did exactly what you said. The humans would go in and review it, and was it meeting the goals? Do we need to tweak and adjust it? They actually created machine learning that could now check on the machines themselves. So at least in their vacuum or their bubble, they're able to do that. Why won't we be able to get to that point where you could create machine learning that will just anticipate what that... I mean, I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but
it's difficult, right? It's how far up the process it can go. I don't think we're ever going to get a machine that can take a client brief and create the strategy and the segments that need to then be marketed on and targeted. Once you have those targets set up, I'm all for machines, running their algorithms and trying to trend towards that, the sweet spot. But you still need smart humans to actually handle those machines and program them correctly.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And Joe, our view on that as well, the human being a big piece is. I mean, a lot of companies built these great Formula One race cars. It's really tough to know how to actually drive that car without hitting it on the walls. So, yeah, I agree with that totally. The other element of this is where, we don't have at Varick many direct client relationships. Often we're working with agencies that have those relationships, but we're beginning to work with more clients, and the agencies are bringing us in to help educate and explain to them. The human piece is tremendously important on the relationship with the client, okay, and how you interpret the success or failures you're having and how you're going to act on it, or from the insights being generated from the data. The humans play a really critical, and I think for a long time we're going to continue playing that role.
So Paul, can you give an example of how where a trader will make a real-time human decision that maybe veers a little bit off of the algorithm, or where you shut the algorithm off? I mean, it's impossible for people to think in the 100 milliseconds that your machines process, but can you give a little example, a little anecdote for where you...
Sure. I mean, we work with an organization that sells to or provides ticket sales possibility or capabilities to college level sporting clients, and basically it's football teams, basketball teams, and whatnot. We found, and we should have thought of this, but our traders picked it up, is we were going great. Algorithms were working on selling tickets, for college games. And it's a very geographic specific thing. But the weather played a major role, okay, in when and how these tickets can be sold and how often. Okay, so if there's a major weather event, it's going to have a major impact. For whatever reason, in most platforms, most DSP platforms, weather is not a targeting capability. Okay, we're looking to build that in for our capability. That plays a major role. Same thing with our largest client is a financial services provider. Okay, there's also no capabilities from the algorithms perspective built into how the market does that day from a trading aspect. Generally speaking, this doesn't make obviously makes a lot of sense. When the market does well, we sell more mutual funds accounts being opened, okay, than when it doesn't, okay? And it's really only my team that can take that into account and make the optimizations accordingly to that. So it's weather, it's financial markets, it's sporting events. It could be political events, such as the inauguration or the actual election that can get into those events, where we actually have to tap into people's idea of what's going on. And any celebrity can cause a major change in a social event that can then impact performance on the ad campaign.
Well, I have someone from Major League Baseball here you should meet, but
I heard the presentation.
Okay, so let's go back to the concept of portfolio management, because in the end, that's what we're doing. I mean, whether it's managing media impressions or creative messaging, what you're doing is you're trying to manage that portfolio for the client. And, to use the Wall Street analogy, I mean, you have the programmatic trading that is, set and run, and then you have the human portfolio managers that are managing those, hopefully. And they're also making, offline equity investment decisions and hedging and other things. So basically, is this script for Madison Avenue already written? Is it really what Wall Street does?
I don't think it is exactly the same, but you must look at kind of the financial community with a great deal of lust in that it is a really, really friction-free, frictionless environment, unlike our world, which is fraught with friction, right? It's a buy-side, sell-side friction. It's highly complex to conduct business, right? Whether it's T's and C's or lawyers or just a simple technology working, it's not quite as simple. So I think that a portion of our business will become that same kind of free flow of buy, sell side, technology-enabled, data and insights-driven. But once again, I don't think it's the 100% solution. Certainly not within our lifetimes or our career lifetimes.
Yeah, I think a better analogy, or one that we use often, is the one of Moneyball in terms of how sabermetrics was used to pick the best baseball players for the Oakland A's. And, that's what we're often doing and how we explain to what we're doing relative to finding audience or finding impressions or whatnot.
That's a great example. Are you hiring people like that?
We are, absolutely.
So let's talk about skill sets. I started the day by interviewing R.A. Blumen from Group M, about what kind of people that are going to thrive in these organizations, and he said basically people who know math. So what are the right skill sets for people to make it on Madison Avenue now? What kind of thinkers? Obviously you said engineers and Moneyball people, but the rest of you?
Well, there's not just one profile, I guess, but I think people who over-index in analytical ability are definitely needed. But at the same time, they also need to be sociable. They need to have great communication skills. They need to be able to roll up their sleeves and get committed. And it's those softer skills that we look at alongside the analytical ability and numerical rigor. So it's a combination, and they're hard to find.
We summarize the culture or the people that we are looking for as curious. People that don't accept the fact that we did something last year, we're going to do it again this year. People that are always questioning, why can't we do that? So I think it's hard to, we often just move to analytics or math or numbers. I think it's just simple innate curiosity. People that are looking to do things differently because the world is changing at such a rapid pace.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hire a lot of creative talent, and I find that there's two different kinds of creative talent. There's, just pure play designers, writers who are like that creative process. And then there are ones who like really embrace the industry and look at design as problem solving, not art. I was a graphic designer. That's kind of how I started my career. And for me, that's how I've always approached, designing solutions. And I think it goes into that briefing process. Like a designer, the creative process in an agency, it's very brief driven, right? Like, okay, what are my marching orders? What are the factors I need to consider? And how do I take this document and turn it into an idea that is not just an idea for the sake of being out there, but is one that meets these criteria? What are the factors here? And I think it's just different factors are going to need to go into that brief, and that process is going to need to be done much faster so that it can happen in real time. Like the creative process as it stands right now needs to allow for more opportunism. Like right now there's a lot of back and forth with the client and rounds and internal reviews, and everything looks perfect, and the client is iterating, and by the time you get a piece out the door, it's 6 weeks have gone by. That's not going to work anymore. So, there's still a place for, the high-level production campaigns, and that's, I think, a lot of people like to say, oh, advertising doesn't work anymore. I think that's bullshit. But, on the same time, like, whether it's content, whether it's creating digital assets for real-time marketing, processes, both on the agency side and the client side, are going to evolve and be more transparent so that there's more inherent trust and accountability, so that things can move faster.
So I think we have time for questions. If anybody wants to ask some agency folks here, like how this RTB thing is changing the world. So I have a really important question, which is, how is it changing people in the sense of you personally? I mean, things seem to keep speeding up. I don't know about you, but every time I, boot up my browser for the day or check my phone, I get a little more anxious every minute because so much is coming at me so fast. And we use this term real time, but we're really talking about two things: real human time and real machine time. And that machine time keeps becoming a bigger and bigger portion of what we do, and I think it's making us nuts. We're more efficient, yes, but what's the human toll? What's the human casualty here? Are you feeling it personally or in your organizations?
I think for consumers, for us, for me personally, there is this kind of ADD nature that is entering into the kind of the psyche, the always moving on to the next thing. I mean, whether it's just simple tsunami of communications, emails that, 400 emails a day it's a pretty tough thing to keep up with on an ongoing basis. So we continually have to do something, check the box, and move on. And eventually, I always talk about this, the complexity gets to a point where the system will break. So we have to think about ways of reducing complexity, reducing friction, and use machines as our friends, because otherwise the toll on humans will be, we will not be able to do it. We can't have 1,000 direct human relationships on the sales side, cope with hundreds of emails a day. It's getting too overwhelming. So we must get ourselves out of Excel, out of Word, into some kind of automation. Otherwise, the system will break.
I think the problem is that email and chat is so easy. It's so So I think you do have to make an active decision to actually step away from your computer, go and talk to your colleague on the other side of the office. You need to make sure that if you lead a team, you actually get them up, get them in a room, get them brainstorming. Just make sure that creative thinking is still alive, because we bring these people into the industry because they are creative thinkers. We need to make sure we nurture that and continue to allow them to use it.
And I think culturally, all society, certainly here in this country or in Western Europe, and certainly Asia too, is getting much faster with everything they do, smartphones and otherwise. We, for good or bad, in this particular business, we're like silly relative to the rest of the world of how active we are with our smartphones, how active we are on LinkedIn or Facebook or otherwise, or Twitter. I mean, almost no other industries like that. I mean, if you look at LinkedIn data, you know, all of us have 1,000 connections on that. Most average people in this country have 10 or 20, okay? But us in this, it's silly. Same thing on Facebook, same thing with our smartphone usage, and how many emails we get. So I would say we're kind of a unique species, good or bad, relative to the rest of society.
So we're kind of the next stage of human evolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is quite, on many levels, it becomes a, and I don't say this to be facetious, but a silly business, okay, and how we have to participate in this, because we are at the bleeding edge of media and obviously advertising and how you interact with all the devices and elements that allow that to happen.
I think the human mind is evolving, right? Like, you know, we all walk around like this with our phones all day, you know, bumping into each other, you know, not even making eye contact. You know, we're having conversations like literally, and I'm talking to you and I'm looking at my phone, and you know, for me, you know, for you, right? You're like, oh my God, what is this world becoming, right? But for my kids, like, they're growing up in this world and it's fine. You know, I have to like argue with them. One screen at a time, kids. You know, like that's like my thing, right? So, you know, I think that the human brain is growing into this capacity to process more information just because it's subjected to it. But there is a breaking point, and you know, I think, you know, you look at like that Lumascape thing, right? What a mess, right? Like, you know, and the reality is, I can't use all these technologies and understand them all, and you know, so I'm going to pick this one and this one, and I'll do that for a while until I feel like I'm losing something in my business. You know, it was interesting. I was talking to. Had lunch with Max Mead from Tube Mogul. He runs sales on the West Coast out there. And we were talking about their real-time bidding for video that they're doing. And I was asking him, like, who's actually embracing it? And he's like, well, I'm finding that the small and mid-size agencies are embracing it quicker because there's risk aversion at the bigger ones. And these small and mid-sized ones are see it as an opportunity for competitive advantage to get the same inventory for lower. I'm sure you have a different perspective on that. I don't know, or maybe you don't. But you know, I think that that's kind of part of this manifestation of like, what do we do next, right? How do you know what's the right thing to do next when there's so much coming at you?
By the way, that Lumascape's mess, you just described our audience here. But so, just last question I'll ask, because I think we're going to run out of time. But do you think that we're at the point of like jumping the shark and going too far with this, in the sense, like one of the weirdest stories I covered so far this year, it's actually kind of brilliant, but I wonder if it's good. I could go into native formats and all these crazy things that are happening now, but one of them was this product that NetShelter created called Empowered. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it allows in real time for you to capture tweets from users and then put those tweets into content modules, you know, ads, and send those tweets to relevantly targeted people based on their behaviors. But it's conceivable with this platform that I would tweet something, Empowered would grab it and target it back to me because it was so inherently relevant because I said it. So, I mean, are we reaching the point now with real-time technologies where those things, obviously they can happen because they are happening. And is that kind of the world we're going into? And can you see even more unintended consequences like that?
So all you need is a mirror, potentially?
Yeah. We are all narcissists, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, during, what was it, some big political event, I guess it was the election, or the debates, I was on Twitter and I made a comment that like, wow, you can tell like who's using bots right now. All these social media gurus are publishing social media articles on Twitter while everyone else in the world is talking about what's on TV right now, you know, and all of a sudden all these gurus look like morons. You know, it was kind of an interesting, you know, side effect of like this automation, and you know how being good at something can make you bad or exposed. You know, it's the same type of thing what you're saying with like sporting events. Not, you know, the algorithms all of a sudden break down when there's an anomaly, and that's when mass attention is focused.
Well, you know, you mentioned that during Sandy, okay, had interesting impact on what happened. At least we could see it in the RTB world. All of our stuff, fortunately, nothing broke down anywhere. But from a performance basis and from a revenue generator, it was our best week ever, okay? Because some things broke down in many places. There were a lot less bidding going on. There were a lot less people buying impressions during that week than there was the week before or the week after, okay? We, fortunately, were up and lock solid, but it was interesting to see that, okay? Because some platforms couldn't deal with what was going on. Obviously, some lost power. There was other issues in there, but it was interesting to see that how things held up during that time period.
Okay, so just to sum up, I think we're saying not less, more of this, but it still is going to come down to those human qualities that connect with other human beings, whether it's the client service, data analysis, or hedging and risk taking in real time, bidding. So I want to thank you all for shedding some light. I'd like you to come back in a year or so, or rather have your robots come back in a year or so.
Yes.
Thank you.
You got it. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
We're going to take a short, about 10-minute coffee break. When we come back, we'll round out